Well, hello there, Detroit, and welcome to Studio 1452, where candid conversations are always welcome. I'm your host, Ebony J.J. Curry, and joining with me today are Commissioners Brittany Kellum and Edward Woods III. We'll be discussing all things redistricting. Why? Because this is a crucial fight for justice and voting equal rights. Welcome, Commissioners. How are you?
Well, good. Just to clarify, I'm the executive director.
Okay,
So
he's the executive director,
I actually
guys.
work for the commission. And this
Okay,
is 1/13th of my boss here to the left, but a
awesome.
powerful one at that.
Awesome. Speaking of the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, a lot of people aren't as privy as they should be. For instance, what you just mentioned. So, if you guys can kind of give a background as far as what you guys stand for, the importance of it, and your roles you guys play.
Sure.
So in 2018, there was an initiative on the ballot to elect citizens instead of politicians to redistrict the state of Michigan. And that's how we came into play. The 13 of us were randomly selected, and we are the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. So since around, I always get the dates wrong, 2020 up until now, we've been working as 13 individuals, regular folks, as I like to say, going through this process of redistricting the congressional, House, and now redrawing the Senate maps.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think what Commissioner Kellum said is, absolutely correct. What I like about it is democracy for the people, by the people, where you actually get to have a say.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of some idealistic civics class when it talks about engagement, you really do have a say in redistricting here in Michigan. And we are looked at as a model, not just for the country, but also for the world, as it relates to that. And what I like about it is what Commissioner Kellum says is everyday citizens. So it's not, you don't have to be a politician. You don't have to fundraise to get on here. You don't have to know somebody. You're randomly selected and you have one task to do, and that's to draw fair maps with citizen input. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And for those of you that's watching now, please feel free to join in, chime in anytime, and submit some of your questions, because this is a Q&A with the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. And being that this is such a huge topic, you're more than free to send in questions. So with that being said, March 23rd, 2022, the lawsuit when it comes to 19 Black Detroit residents filed a lawsuit when it comes to these fair maps. Dive into that. Where did that start? And 2 years later, where are we today? And what role did you guys play to get us to where we are today and where we plan to be?
I can share. I think, what I've said before about this is everyone loves a redemption story, right? I think we all, as human beings, but again, as regular citizens, were given a set of information when we were first drawing the maps. And I truly believe that with that set of information, we thought we were doing the best job. The lawsuit came, the courts decided, you can do a little better than that. We feel like folks could be more represented if you all go back in as a commission and redraw certain districts. And so we're smack dab in the middle of that process for the Senate districts. I, for one, as a native Detroiter, as a Black woman, I'm very always happy when there's another opportunity to get things right. And I think the commission is doing that best job by reactivating citizens, trying to get folks re-engaged, doing things like this where people can ask questions, and so that we can hear from the citizens, get their areas right, redraw the lines, and have another successful map just like we did for the House.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Edward?
I think she covered it quite well. I mean, the main thing is getting citizens engaged and involved. Next week on Thursday, we will have a virtual town hall where we will explain the 12 maps. We have 6 collaborative maps and 6 individual maps so that residents can understand which maps the commission are considering. And then when we have our public hearings on July 11th, 12th, and 13th, they can actually come to the commission and say, you know what, I like this map and this is why. Or, you know what, I like this map, but can you consider a tweak here or a tweak there? And so what we're really trying to do is drive more people to get engaged in the process. And it doesn't have to be the older people. We want Gen Z, we want millennials, we want everybody, because everybody has a stake in who represents them. And if you don't show up and speak up, you can't complain.
Absolutely. And when it comes to Gen Zers, more specifically, a lot of them may not even know what redistricting may mean for them. A lot of them, like when you talk about this 12 different maps, they might not even know what each map consists of. So in this moment, like in layman terms, can you kind of like break that down for the different generational barriers who may not be as privy as the Gen Xers or even the boomers?
I like to break democracy into a three-legged stool.
Mhm.
Everybody knows about voting, because if you don't vote, you can't complain. If you don't vote, you can't make sure you get fair representation.
Mhm.
Everybody understands about the census. Every 10 years we do the census. It's an average of $18,000 per person that comes into your community. If someone is not counted, that means you lose $18,000 a year for a total of $180,000 per person over 10 years.
Mhm.
Redistricting is a little bit different, because redistricting is trying to identify who represents you and your community.
Mhm.
And if you don't show up and speak up, you could be attached to another community that might not share your interest on public safety, healthcare, education, and therefore your vote can be diluted. And so redistricting is an opportunity for you as well as your community to ensure that you have fair representation and stay intact instead of being split or packed and your voice is diluted or diminished.
And I'll also say Gen Z and millennials, we like to be heard, right? We're the rebels without a cause sometimes.
Yeah.
And so if I could make the most simple plea for young folks like myself that might feel a little disengaged and feel like there's a workaround for everything, this opportunity of redistricting offers citizens like that, young people like that, a chance to be heard. We like to be listened to. We have an imagination. We're very innovative, and so to that point, this covers the dollars. This pays for the ear. Just want to listen to that great idea that you're excited about. Whatever you're journaling about, whatever you're telling your friend about, whatever entrepreneurial spirit, social impact idea you might have. There's a hierarchy, there's a process to that. And so when you finally get in those incubation hubs, when you're talking to those people that could be in charge of getting those ideas through, this is a small or big process that is the inception of that.
Brittany, when you mentioned that us as millennials or Gen Zers, our main goal is to simply be heard. I'm curious, what is your background before you came to the commission, and like, what's the reason, you're here?
Thank you. I appreciate that, because I have a whole life outside of being a commissioner. I do.
And what is a commissioner for the people who may not know?
So the commissioner is just like our fancy label. That's what they call us on the job of redistricting. So currently I am the vice chair. I've been vice chair before. I've been chair. It just means that I'm facilitating the meetings, and we are the designated body as commissioners. We're the only people that can touch these maps. We're the only people that can fight, argue professionally, and try to hash out what happens. We're the liaison between the citizens and the actual maps that you see, because we're translating what we hear on paper. We are the only ones that can communicate with map drawers during the active process of mapping. So if I were to define commissioner, that's what it would be. But during the day, I'm a trauma specialist. I work with young people and adults who have survived violent crimes, particularly sexual violence. I have a nonprofit called Just Speak, and I work diligently in the community to build a spirit of advocacy and make mental health, particularly the subject of trauma, accessible for other people.
And what was the spark that pushed you right here fighting for redistricting?
Advocacy. I think, as Mr. Edward Woods III said, right, there's a lot of, and even with the situation of the courts, there's a lot of tension when it comes to people of color, specifically Black people in politics, particularly getting our voice heard. I think there is both a fear and a sadness there, because there is honest mistrust that has been developed historically, and it's a part of our historical trauma. And so I think while I sit pretty much apolitical, I think it melds well with this being an assignment of how I fight for people, how I fight for my clients, and education, explaining things to people so that even if you don't want to participate, that's fine. But now you have the information, and that's what true advocacy is. So that's the spark. I saw this opportunity. It was kind of a 1 in a million chance. You fill out the application. You don't know if you're going to be selected. I was taking my grandmother to breakfast for her birthday. She's no longer here. Me and my mom and my grandmother are watching this, and they called my name. I'm like, me?
Brittany Keller.
Yeah, you don't even really know what it means. So yeah, here I am.
Wow, that's amazing. What about yourself, Edward?
I was actually applying for the job. I was working someplace else. I was like, you know what, this would actually be interesting. So when I started off at the commission, I was their communications and outreach director, and then became the executive director. But I went and applied, went through the process. I was like, wow, that's why I think I have a chance. I'm like, I do have a chance. And then lo and behold, they hired me on the commission, and it's been a whirlwind ever since then.
Absolutely. Former Senator Adam Ollier, he was once a huge advocate for, the commission and making sure that redistricting is fairly sought out. With that being said, as you know, now he's currently off the ballot for Black representation when it comes to the congressional race, the Senate race. So tell me, what are you guys' thought about that, being that he was such a trailblazer? Do we have someone else that's trailblazing that you feel as if that's really been fighting the charge?
Well, I understand the commission's role in that particular endeavor was to draw the 13 congressional districts. We have no role in elections or no role in seeing whether or not signatures are validated. Our job was to ensure, and that was called the chestnut map, was drawn fairly. There's been no challenge to the chestnut map, and so we really don't have a dog in that fight as relates to the commission.
Absolutely. Keep in mind, for all of you guys who's watching, please feel free to send in your questions. We have the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission right here with us. So if you have any of your questions, please feel free to share them with us today. What impact do you hope the commission's work will have on Michigan's political landscape?
Well, once again, we're here to draw fair maps. We're not here to tilt it Democrat or Republican. We have 7 ranked redistricting criteria that the commission is required to follow. 1 is equal population and the Voting Rights Act. 2 is geographically contiguous. 3 is to reflect the state's diversity and communities of interest. 4 is partisan fairness. We can't favor Democrats or Republicans. 5, we can't favor the incumbent or a candidate. 6, we're to reflect this county, municipal, and township boundaries. And then number 7, reasonably compact. I think Commissioner Kellum does a great job of explaining communities of interest because people sometimes have a challenge like that, and I want to punt it over to her.
I will explain communities of interest. I also want to say that my hope for our impact on the political landscape is that people are more engaged in the process and they don't feel like you have to be a politician or a pundit, right, to engage in this discussion. I'm really invested in people being more informed and being more readily excited about engaging. That invigorates me to have conversations that are not with all, without the fluff and the frills, and people are actually able to understand the process. So I hope it teaches people to galvanize. I hope it teaches people maybe, as a consequence, what happens when you don't come to an open hearing. This is an enormous opportunity for politicians to wake up the citizens that they hope would vote for them, as well as citizens to really get behind that closed door where it has been just politicians in the past and reimagine their cities and their neighborhoods. And that's what Edward likes for me to say. The communities of interest are self-defined, right? And so when we talk about voice and advocacy and show up and speak up, it allows people to give their own neighborhoods, their own communities a definition. We don't do it for them. It allows them to come out as an individual and describe what happens on the infamous Mac and Bewick. What does that really mean? What are we talking about when we say there's the Bagley community? What does the Palmer Woods, Sherwood Forest, East English Village, Southwest, bring those neighborhoods alive? Why do those communities need to be together? What farms do you share across the way? Why is it important for you to be able to walk to the bodega and not have another senator representative from a northern suburb be able to speak to that? That's what we're talking about with communities of interest. And once we kind of go to that primary step, right, just kind of having a conversation about operationally being able to define your community, now it's time to look at the maps, see where your community is, kind of like a Where is Waldo? This is my street. Okay, I recognize this area. Who would I be best fit with? And that's what we're looking for now. That's when, as a commission, and speaking for myself, I recognize also as an educator, I'm like, now they're learning. Now they see what this process means because the feedback is now specific and it's relevant to our mapping process.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And speaking of the process, 2022 is when the lawsuit was filed. Here we are now in 2024. What has been like the most challenging, like what has been the most challenges during this process, and where are we with this process? And what's the deadline as far as getting the maps right?
Yeah, so I'll speak to the challenges. I always let Edward do the deadlines because he loves that part. But people are challenging. People are challenging. We've been doing this for a while.
Yes.
And it is like the best and worst group project. In Metro Detroit. So it's important that my fellow commissioners trust me and respect me, not just as a human, as a Black woman. And so I'm really finding myself in that space, but it's a good exercise in stretching love.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The deadline is Thursday, June 27th. I wanted to make sure I looked it up. I had the correct deadline for other people. Today, the deadline is to move the maps to the court. And so right now we're in the process of updating the website with the 6 collaborative maps, the 6 individual maps, so that we can move to the court. We're a deadline to doing that tonight. And then that will help explain, like I shared earlier, on May 29th and June 6th, we will have a virtual town hall where people can ask questions about the maps, or what neighborhood am I in, or did you consider this or this particular map? And so we want to explain the map so people can understand. That's really a critical part of the process. The court only required us to have 1 public hearing. We're actually doing 6 formal public hearings plus 2 virtual town halls. The commission has always been an overachiever. In the initial, they required 10 the first round. We did actually 16.
Wow.
And then the second, we run up against time. We were going to do more, but we just did the standard 5 that's required in the Constitution. And so what we're, commission has always been about is public feedback. We had nearly 30,000 public comments the first time when we did the process in 2021. When it came to the Motown Sound FCE1 that was selected for the House plan, we have over 100 comments that people came out and registered in favor of that particular plan. And so the commission has done a great job of aggregating citizen input. We just had a presentation Monday about the citizen input regarding the maps and what people were saying, so that you could get the totality of the citizen input, not what this group said versus this group or this group. We wanted to hear everybody. And I say everybody. And so that's what they did at University of Michigan, the Club Center for Local, SIPS Urban and Policy Department did that for us. And they did a phenomenal job in their presentation. And so hats off to Tom Ivako and his team there for doing that. They'll be doing that again when it comes to selecting the maps. So I just wanted to share with you that everybody's input is considered, whether it's in person, whether it's virtual, whether it's in the written public comment portal or the mapping mapping comment portal. Everybody's input is considered and everybody's input is tracked. Even if you do an email or snail mail, we put that in there as well. So I just want to share with you that this is a comprehensive process where the citizens are voices. The commission wants that. That's why we tell people to show up and speak up. And we expect people to come and tell their self-interest.
Absolutely.
That's what we expect. So if you have a self-interest, come and share your self-interest. We expect that. We want that. However, the commission's job is to do what's in the best interest of Michigan. But your job as citizens and as individuals is to tell us your self-interest.
Absolutely. And with that, transparently, what has been some of the biggest pushbacks from the people? And with like the hundreds and thousands of comments that you guys mentioned, how do you weave through that to understand what Michigan needs, what's best for Michigan, and also what's best for the citizens all in one?
I think it's a marrying of 2 things, right? Like we've been listening for a long time.
Yes.
And even though these aren't the same people that come out every day, there are commonalities because there might be people coming from the same community. And so as we've been listening consistently, I think our listening has matured. And so we're marrying that with the comments that are on the portal, with the people that are now coming to the meetings, whether that's in person or virtually, as well as that's what the 13 of us are on the commission for. We're kind of experts of our own communities, and so that's where the trust comes in. That's the hard part, because you're listening to each other. You're hoping that individual commissioners are speaking honestly and from a place of knowing their community. You're also listening to citizens and filtering if they're politicians or if they're talking about their communities in a genuine way. But I think that's where the numbers come in. That's when you want a lot of people from Detroit, a lot of people from Bloomfield Hills, a lot of folks from Ann Arbor, Taylor. We need the people to come out from different areas, because then, especially as my little scientist brain is going, that's where the data comes in. That's how you're able to have that kind of holistic listening that we're looking for.
And that's why the commission, in its initial public hearings in May, went to the areas where the maps are going to be impacted. Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne counties. Those are where the maps are going to be impacted. And that's why we went out there, asked them about their communities of interest, so that the commission, while they were drawing the maps, could consider it. And the beauty about this whole thing is everything is online. Every collaborative map that was drawn, you can actually watch them do it online. Now, it might be boring. You know, you might need more than popcorn. You might need some soul food so that you can stay awake.
That's gonna put you to sleep. That's the itis.
I don't do coffee, but I love me some soul food. So if you want some macaroni and cheese, you watch one part, then get over there to the greens and get the other part, then get that seasoned fried chicken, get the other part. Because sometimes, like yesterday, we almost spent 8 hours. So you got to have that hot peach cobbler and the ice cream ready, because otherwise it's going to be a little bit of a problem. But we do take a break for about an hour or so. But I just want you to know it has to be an interactive soul food experience, because you might think it's boring, but guess what? It's democracy at work. And that's why you got to come June 11th. We'll be at Cass Tech for a public hearing that will take place from 10 to 1. That, remember, we're going to make 10 to 12:30. 12:30 to 1:30 we'll be at lunch. Then we're going to go 1:30 to 3. Then we're taking a break from 3 to 4. And then we're going 4 to 7. So we're at Cass Tech Tuesday, June 11th, King on Wednesday, June 12th, and then June 13th, we're at Renaissance.
Absolutely. Again, for those those who are watching, don't forget that you can go ahead and put in your questions, comment questions, and we'll love to go ahead and share this with Brittany and Edward. Now, we've talked about the whole vast field when it comes to redistricting and also the commission as a whole. Now, as we kind of narrow it down and look at one blade of grass, the Black community here in Detroit, how has the commission really pushed forward those concerns of the Black community here? And also, what are the biggest concerns of the residents here in Detroit?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest concerns that continues to be a concern and is the fuel behind the lawsuit is wanting to be heard, wanting to have that representation. And I think how we've answered that, and I can speak for myself, I can speak to the conversations that I've had with Edward, the 3 places that he just said, when he said, okay, Brittany, where should we have these hearings? I said, come to DPS.
Yes.
DPS means something
to
the city of Detroit. I was a partial product of DPS, and then I went to a private school. However, going to where the Black people are and where they will feel comfortable, making these meetings, but making the meeting spaces sacred, right? So if I'm going to have a conversation with you, no, the commission can't necessarily be in your living room, but we can go where you had a memory in high school. We can go to a community center where you might have played basketball or had a mentor. And I think that's a part of it. It's deeply emotional. It's deeply psychological, this process. And so if I have to explain to a person our age, somebody that would be my grandmother or auntie, over and over and over again, what this redistricting process is, that we're not the city council, that we can't help you pay your water bill, but we're here to help you draw these areas that could have impact, right, on those things, I'm going to do it over and over again. So I can say that particularly because it's still fresh during the House process, right, we were walking the audience Edward does a very good job in making sure that the maps are on these huge boards that people can see.
Mm-hmm.
They can also go back and talk to our good buddy Ryan, who is on the laptop and showing these areas and can help you pinpoint. So a big part about that also is accessibility.
Yeah.
Making it accessible. We can talk about criterion all day, but I'm a person that if the people of communities don't understand the language, if Black people don't understand what you're saying, if it still feels very privileged and elite, and if we're coming in and not being accessible to them, then we're going to miss the mark every time.
Mm-hmm.
I think the commission's done a great job in terms of minority outreach, and I'll get to African Americans, but we've reached out to the Bengali population through APIA votes. We reach out through the Arab American population through Access. And we've reached out with the Hispanic Corporation, in Detroit, and but also across the state.
Mm-hmm.
So we have really tried to go into minority communities. We try to target women. We've tried to target young people. We've really tried to have a wide spectrum in terms of outreach. Specifically when it comes to Detroit and other communities such as Flint, we invested even a little bit more by identifying some resources in those areas that could help us. We have Culturate group who is here with us, Public Relations, who does a great job with our social media and non-traditional media outreach, and that's why we're here today. We have McConnell Communications, who helps us with our traditional media outreach, but also our community outreach. We went to the neighborhood, so we reached out to the Detroit neighborhood department. They came and made a presentation to the commission specifically about the neighborhoods in Detroit. And so we really appreciate Brother Ray for coming out and doing that presentation for us. We've also done a lot of neighborhood groups. Commissioner Kellum has been out quite a bit, as well as Commissioner Eade and others, but they have been out all around Metro Detroit speaking, presenting different days in the week. I've done the same as well, and that's something that's really important. But then we've also done presentations with regards to education. Sometimes people aren't comfortable in a public setting asking questions. But when you can come down and meet with like 5 to 10 people or 30 people in a presentation and explain it, it's amazing how quickly people catch on when they're in a safe environment and don't have to worry about, I don't want to look stupid, or I don't want to feel like I'm not asking the right question. And that's why we spent more time, going and say, what, we got to get into the communities. We got to get to places that aren't as public, where people can feel free in their own sacred space to ask the questions, to contribute to their understanding with regard to the process. And as Commissioner Kellum saying, as an educator, you like to see the light bulb going. Well, as a director, but also as the former communications and outreach person for him, I like to see the light bulb going. I like it when people understand, and then it can explain it to someone else and say, this is what you need to do, because that happens organically. And when it happens organically, it's amazing the public input you can have, because people not only understand what's happening, but they understand the importance of their voice. And that, to me, is a great achievement when that happens. But like I said, it's all about democracy and people believing that their voice is heard, and then they can see how their voice is being considered, even though it may be accepted or may not be accepted. They can at least know their voice was considered. And that's important to me. And that's my greatest, to be honest with you, satisfaction as a public administrator, is witnessing that process in action.
Yes, I'm curious, with this process being a pretty lengthy process, as we mentioned, is this the first time that we're here? If not, when was the last time it's been kind of this challenging, especially when it comes to the Black community here in the city of Detroit, having an uprise against these maps? If this isn't the first time, when was it?
Well, this is the first time we've ever had a Michigan Independent Citizen District Commission. In the history of this, we've never done it before. This is the first time that redistricting has been done in an open and transparent manner. Before, it was done behind closed doors, and citizens didn't have a voice. So that's also the nuance of this one, is people have a voice. They can come down, they know who to yell. I'm not going to say yell, but they know,
because they be yelling at them.
They know who to talk to, where they can actually have a voice. And to be honest with you, I love it. We went from the worst gerrymandered maps in the country to the best maps in the country. We got bipartisan support from former President Barack Obama, as well as the former governor of Alabama, help us, Lord, former governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger. We've gotten reviews from the Princeton Review with regard to that, from the Brenner Center of Justice, We have gotten, national independent reviews, bipartisan support as it relates to the maps. And let's not forget, more than 61% of Michigan voters voted for this change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think like what was it like before? It was silent, and that's a part of the hardship, that learning curve. People asking for help is traumatic because the help seeker has one definition, and the person that's giving the help is going to have another definition of what that support looks like. And so that's a part of what's happening here as the commission is engaging for the first time. No matter what your personality is, you're on this commission, you have to engage with people. That can be traumatic for some and a learning curve. And then the people of Metro Detroit and beyond are learning how to listen and speak up for themselves and advocate for themselves for the first time. So that is also the hardest part, right? When we're thinking about how there was no voice before, and your voice was whatever you circled in on your ballot or whoever you could talk to that was close by to kind of have that influence. And now we've busted the doors and the barriers wide open and are saying, hey, tell me what you think. And it's like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah,
so that part, being patient, but also at the same time, like, okay, I know this is happening fast, but taking the training wheels off and wanting people to engage in a very, very high level, that's also a challenge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, this is a historic process. Mm-hmm. And now that the floodgates are open, a lot of people are coming in and pouring in their concerns, or some may have questions that they did not know that they needed to even ask. With the historic inequalities, and especially if you think about the Voting Rights Act and how far we've come from that, and with this commission being the first of its kind, what are the differences or the comparisons when it comes to the inequalities we faced, just a couple of years ago when it comes to the Voting Rights Act and where we are now?
Well, I think the difference would have to be in the criteria. Mm-hmm. Under the previous criteria, they used what was called the A-poll standards. Mm. And the A-poll standards focused on keeping the county, the city, and the township boundaries whole. And what that did was it divided or even packed people of color when it comes to votes. Mm-hmm. And so in this new process, when you have equal population in the Voting Rights Act as the number one ranked criteria, and incidentally, the commission was not found in violation of the Voting Rights Act, just so we're clear. Mm-hmm. They were found in violation of the 14th Amendment, which was the Equal Protection Clause, but they were not found in violation of the Voting Rights Act. That's a different ballgame. Because see, once you make that number one, that eliminates this whole county, city and township boundaries, and that's why you saw a lot of packing and cracking, putting people together to dilute their vote, cracking, splitting people apart to also dilute their vote. That's what happened. Because see, when you pack, you could actually probably have two districts instead of having one district. And when you crack, you have no districts when you could possibly have one district. And those are the challenges that were taking place, and that's why this new amendment came about through the ballot proposal in 2018 that Commissioner Kellum referenced. And so what you're seeing is a better process that's more inclusive, not exclusive, but also requires and is driven by citizen input because of the required public hearings that you have to have in the Constitution. And that's when I was talking about earlier, the democracy for the people, by the people, where people get up, where people are engaged, where the commission, as Commissioner Kellum saying, come with their feedback. This is important. She's waving the flag. She's waving. But and it's so important to take advantage. And even though we're at the final stretch, we're not home yet. We still need people to come learn first. It's the education part. That's why we're doing these virtual town hall meetings. The education part. We expect people to ask questions. Sorry, it's in a public forum, but you can ask whatever question you want because it's about you understanding how you want to raise your voice. Then the public hearing is taking advantage of the opportunity to raise your voice. And the beauty about it, if you're homebound, let's say you're not mobile, you can call in and still raise your voice. Yes, it's great to come in person, but you can still call in and raise your voice. If you want to write comments, you can do it. There's multiple avenues for you to raise your voice, and each avenue is considered by the commission. But it's nothing like making a public comment in person and have them you look them dead in the eye
Mm.
and tell them this is what you want. This is my community. It's been in my family for generations. And have that passion and let them feel it, because they can feel it when you come. So I always encourage people, if you have the opportunity, come in person, show up and speak up. At the last time they did it, you had 3 minutes for public comments, and then you could sign up for a second time for 2 minutes. For the virtual town halls that are coming up next week, you have 90 seconds. And so, take your time, prepare your speech. But I mean, I've seen some masterful presentations, compelling presentations. And guess what? If the commission likes what you have or has a question, they can ask you a question, and that does not contribute to your time. So you can get additional time.
Right.
And I've seen people come up there and commission come, excuse me, I have a question.
If you say that at the city council meetings, they'll love that for the public hearing.
Well, maybe people need to follow us and how we do business. But once again, we're a trailblazer because of this new amendment that more than 61% of the Michigan voters did it. And we think we're a great model for democracy. Have we made some pitfalls? Absolutely. But when you take the totality of the situation, it's been great. And I also want to reiterate, each commissioner is qualified because they meet the constitutional requirement. And I don't want to talk about experience. I don't want to talk about who knows what consultant. The Constitution lays out the qualifications for each commissioner. And as long as they meet the constitutional requirements, they are more than qualified to serve. Because this is a new standard for redistricting. It's not the old standard, and it's an open and transparent. And if you look at it, everyday citizens are doing the job just as good, if not even better, than professional politicians. And so I just want to give my hats off to all of our commissioners, those that have served in the past, as well as those that are serving, because they're doing a phenomenal job in tight timelines and trying to consider everyone's voice to make a difference.
Absolutely. I am curious. How diverse are the commissioners?
What are you really asking?
How many Black people? Exactly. Thank you.
So it's myself, and then it's Juanita Curry, and then we have Anthony E., who's Chaldean. And the rest of the commissioners are my majority cousins.
Okay. So tell me, how do you feel as if that kind of resonates with the city of Detroit, specifically, being that we are a majority Black population?
So I feel a lot of pressure. I think when I first started, I didn't, because I'm hopeful, and I still am, right? Like, I am a person that believes best intentions. I've been fortunate not to have a lot of experiences of, in my awareness, oppression or racism, right? So I think as we have continued on with this process, I have also learned how important my spirit of advocacy was going to play out in this for the citizens of Detroit and for Black people. So I think that if I had a wish, the pressure that I feel is not just as a Black woman, but it's also as a Detroiter. I want more Black people to engage in the process of mapping. And I also think it would be great, as a citizen, to have citizen support. But I think a part of that is what we've described before. There's just a gap in understanding. There's a time gap happening, right? So I really try to do my best, and it's not performa. I live and breathe wanting folks to do well and be well. I do my best to make people comfortable and to explain things, because I want them to go back and have that conversation with someone else. So I feel like it has that impact on citizens, right? Like, that's the impact that I feel. I can't say how other Black citizens feel about me being on the commission. And then I feel like there is a respect that I hold sometimes on the commission, because I am a Detroiter, just like Juanita is, right? That when we're drawing, there is a great expectation that we're drawn because we know the area. But also I don't represent all Black people. So that's why I need folks from the community of all sorts of diverse backgrounds to come and engage, because I cannot do it all by myself. And Ms. Curry cannot do it all by herself either.
And I think that's, really important, because there's a perception that if you're a minority or what have you, you represent the whole entire group.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really an unfair weight for anyone to have. You know, as Commissioner Kellum noted, Commissioner Eade, who's our chair, doesn't represent all Chaldeans. And we have to understand that everybody doesn't vote alike. Everybody's not in the same economic level, education level, what have you, and you vote your self-interest. And just like there's diversity of votes in other races, there's diversity of votes when it comes to the Black race as well. And so I would not want anyone on the commission to feel that type of pressure that they're representing a particular group or race or what have you based upon the demographic that they're in. I want them to feel the pressure of, look, we have a responsibility in doing what's best for Michigan and its diversity and being inclusive. And that's a healthy weight of responsibility. It's an expected weight of responsibility, but oftentimes we don't articulate that and make that plain. And so I thank you for the question so that we can make it plain on this broadcast today.
Absolutely. It's an important question. Last but not least, what are your hopes for the future of redistricting when it comes to the state of Michigan and across the United States?
I hope it sticks around. I know that's like a very simple way to answer that, but I hope that this is something that other citizens, 10 years from now or so, get to engage in. I hope that it has truly made its mark. I know people feel all types of ways about us, right? But I feel like the thing that I want people to take away from it is how we've engaged and done our best and collaborated in a way where citizens for the first time are being able to truly use their voice. And I can only pray that for individual commissioners, we continue to grow and we see the connection between the positions that we've held as commissioners and our professional and personal lives, because it's a tall order. That's a spiritual side of me that will never leave, but it's an assignment. And I hope people, no matter what they believe in, are connected with why they're a commissioner and what they were supposed to do while we're doing this job.
Well, the commission has done a report. We've also done some lessons learned from the process. We'll probably re-engage that on a smaller scale as a result of what happened here. And I think we put that out on the website. Our rules and procedures were adopted by the Colorado Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. And so there's some pride with regards to that. There's commissions similar to us are California, Colorado, and Arizona. But there's been a lot of interest across the country where Ohio is taking a look at us as a model. They made some different tweaks. Wisconsin is taking a look at us, Illinois, Pennsylvania. We're seeing who's taking an interest in this redistricting process. I think it should be a national model where citizens are doing it. And citizens, or whether they're randomly selected or however it is, as long as it's not a politicized selection process, I think it can bring a healthy dose to democracy. I think it can be a fairness. So you don't have these extreme gerrymandering, whether it's racial or partisan. And I just like democracy for the people, by the people. I went with civics, what we learned in civics. I think it should be ideal. And the commission has shown that. And I think it's a great model that we can look at nationally, but also internationally, so that we have a government that's for the people, by the people, but actually run by everyday citizens, where all they're trying to do is not get a committee appointment, not try to climb up the leadership ladder, but just doing what's best for the state of Michigan. That's what I like about it the most.
And I know earlier in the conversation, you all mentioned the next public hearing dates. If you can just remind us as we wrap up.
June 11th, Cass Tech. June 12th, King. June 13th, Renaissance. The times, 10 to 12:30. Then we're going to have a lunch from 12:30 to 1:30. We'll go from 1:30 to 3. Then there's a break from 3 to 4. And then we go 4 to 7. It was important that we had it we wanted it where parking was free, where the facility was accessible, and that we can adjust to people's work schedules. We know our kids are out of school, so we don't have to worry about that. But we do know the kids have Little League and they have all these other sports. So we wanted to find different times where we could access as many people as possible, knowing that summer schedule is different than a work schedule, but we can make a time where everybody can show up and speak up.
Absolutely. Well, as we know, redistricting and talking about creating new maps is a complex conversation. So thank you for taking the time out to talk with us and have a Q&A. And hopefully those who are watching had a bit of a more understanding. And if not, please join the public hearings that is coming up next month. Thank you for stopping into Studio 1452. Again, this is Ebony JJ Curry, and you have an amazing day.